The actor who brought to life Pennywise the Dancing Clown says fans should expect an even more bloodthirsty incarnation of the shape-shifting evil in It Chapter 2. Pennywise has changed over the course of the 27 years. He's been doing this forever really, so he doesn't change in the sense that you would look differently. He looks however he wants to look for any particular prey at the time, but I do think there's a change, the actor says. Pennywise nourishes itself on fear, but the Losers Club made the creature taste that emotion for real when they brutalized it back into hiding. The arc of the first movie is that he, for the first time, experiences fear himself, the actor says. His last line, fear, is him experiencing it for the first time, and he's sort of shocked and perplexed and surprised. Like, what is this? It's like the bully, or the abusive parent, or spouse finally getting punched back. That may save the victim in the short run, but the next attack is likely to be even more horrific as punishment. And that's where Pennywise's deranged mind is when he resurrects. He's inflicted fear on his prey, and he's very focused on fear, but he's never experienced it himself. Now he's experienced something that he has been inflicting on others, and there is a shift leading into the second movie. It was once a game to Pennywise, but the being is no longer simply delighting in the suffering he causes. He wants revenge. It fuels hatred and anger towards the kids, who will be adults in this one, so I think there might be an even more vicious Pennywise. Skarsgård also thinks It Chapter 2 will feature an even more bizarre version of the monster, pushing the limits of its mind-bending manipulations, twisting into the darkest things imaginable. There's a lot to explore, Skarsgård says. You can change him or make him wackier, but he's not really bound to continuity in the sense that a normal character would be. We can explore his unpredictability now that we've established the character for the audience. We can still sort of shock them. That's all great. No, it really is, and I love the creepy old lady stuff just as much as it would seem that everyone else is digging it too. It's effective as hell and simply oozes of creepy atmosphere. This was a brilliant way to open up the marketing campaign for Chapter 2, giving us this extended look at a very iconic scene from the book. And as a huge fan of the novel, currently reading it for a third time, one also knows that there's a lot going on in between the lines, and that's what I wish to dig deep into in regards to both the teaser trailer here and the final trailer. So if you're just here looking for a quick, light analysis of these trailers, there's a million other similar videos of such kind floating around out there. But I personally wish to give you guys, and myself I guess, something else. Something, dare I say, more. You will see and hear me springboarding off from the trailers at points, touching upon stuff that of course is still very much related in one way or the other to what we see in the images and footage on screen. I also want to mention that I did manage, in the nick of time, to incorporate some few beats from the released featurette, plus some few images, mostly from foreign crappy quality TV spots, only to fill in some certain gaps for the trailers. Just know that I tend to get a lot out of a single frame of footage, and I can't help but cross-examine things, holding it up against the book that I hold so very dear to my heart, and just pondering over what it potentially could tell us about Chapter 2. I also will admit that I do take great pride in trying to edit my stuff in a seamless, non-illusion breaking and clever way, along with adding the right sound mixes, etc. All to try and make things as interesting and captivating for you all to watch. Whether or not I succeed in any way is not up for me to judge though. I can only do what I like to do, and if some of you dig it, it's worth it for me. Okay, Upon seeing this absolutely amazing, glorious-looking teaser trailer for the very first time, I instantly smiled, and I felt that this film is going to be equally as great, if not better, than Chapter 1. Yes, I just said that. See, unlike with the new Pet Sematary and those trailers, I already feel that this material is in the best possible hands, and it just warms my heart. Of course, it helps quite a bit that Chapter 1 was so damn good, and seeing that it's the exact same team behind Chapter 2, it does put my heart more at ease, even before having seen the film. Anyway, I'm about to analyze the shit out of these trailers and far beyond, so if I haven't lost you quite yet, sit down, get comfortable, cause we're going on a little journey together. Let's go back to the very beginning, and it all started with the sound of a doorbell.
Yes, can I help you?
I used to live here.
Won't you come in? It's the least I can do.
From the very first frame, there's something significant to notice here. We see the name Marsh on the door, and I wanted to touch upon this because a hell of a lot of people out there are still asking today, didn't Beverly already kill her father in Chapter 1? See, this has been the question from many people, and I don't blame anyone for thinking that she killed him. My answer, though, is no, she didn't kill him, and there's more than one thing to back that whole thing up with. Of course, when Bev goes to visit her old man here in Chapter 2, he is now dead, and the name on the door is just a mind trick of Pennywise's. When the old woman opens up, she informs Bev of her father's passing just a few years back, and the name on the door then suddenly reads Kirsch instead of Marsh. But in the summer of '89, Bev never killed her father, she just knocked him out. Also, if you listen carefully in Chapter 1, one can still hear Mr. Marsh spouting off agonizing grunts right after Bev hit him in the head and he's laying there lifeless on the floor. This too is present even later when Bill comes to her house and he sees him laying there. He's still breathing. There's even heavier proof to be found that Mr. Marsh did survive that blow to the head. It kinda reveals itself hidden in between the imagery coming up now.
Is it like you remember?
Cleaner.
You feel free to look around while I get the water boiling.
Thanks, Miss Kirsch. You do that. Meanwhile, we can speculate over the tiny bit we just saw, cause there was something that caught my eye. As we see, Bev goes straight for the postcard that Ben wrote her 27 years earlier. This bit here shows us where young Bev hit the postcard for the second time, after that whole violent episode she had with her dad in the first film, and this furthermore strengthens the thought that Mr. Marsh did not die by that kitchen sink. Remember that we hear Alan Marsh say in Chapter 1 that he found the postcard in Bev's underwear drawer, which was what led up to that whole violent outburst. Why is that relevant to mention? Because with us now seeing here that Bev hid it away once again after that confrontation, it also pretty much tells us that Alan Marsh did not die either. Had he died, there would have been no reason for young Bev to hide the postcard for a second time, cause whom would she then be hiding it from, you see? It's kind of a no-brainer when you really think about it. We can even see that the card has been ripped apart, no doubt by Alan Marsh, and of course later on been taped back together by Beverly herself. Thereafter, she hid it away in a new place where we now see it in the teaser trailer here. I also love that Bev hid it in a plastic sheet, which is very telling of just how much it really means to her. Why she never took it with her when moving to stay with her aunt, as telling Bill she would be doing at that final scene of the first film, I don't know. Guess she just forgot it in between all the trauma, and who could blame her? Oh, and those bloodstains still being present on the card from that massive splatter that occurred in the first movie all remains. Pretty creepy. So, there she sits 27 years later with the postcard in her hand and the memory slowly starts flooding back to her.
Your hair is winter fire. January embers.
There you go.
Thank you.
Now some music.
You know that song Miss Kirsch puts on? That's an old Danish song, as a matter of fact, and to me that was crazy fun to hear, because I myself am too Danish, born and raised in little old Denmark. If one listens very carefully over the talk that Beverly has with Kirsch later on, one can also hear, vaguely, some of that Danish lyrics being sung, and I can only imagine that it must sound so weird to others. Anyway, in the bit we just saw is also where Miss Kirsch starts acting, creepy, to say the least, and it all of course starts in this bit where Kirsch is seen out in the hallway walking away in a very rapid, almost reptilian fashion, or dare I say spider. Nevertheless, I'm actually more interested in elaborating on the bruises we see on Beth's arm here, and everything else a single image like that can get my mind to ponder over in regards to the movie. For those not knowing, and you have been warned about spoilers, Beverly is in an abusive relationship with a man that also happens to be her boss. So much for Pennywise saying the losers will go on to lead happy lives. Only in this case it does make sorta sense. Beverly's boyfriend in this movie, Tom Rogan, played by Will Beinbrink, will, much like Beth's father, be wanting to shelter her, to keep her pure, so to speak, and to stay, quote, his little girl. Beverly grows up to be a successful fashion designer, but in the end, she's really just a shell of her former self, and her boyfriend, of course, likes it that way. It keeps her in check, so to speak. That is, until she gets that call from Mike Hanlon telling her that it has returned, reminding her of the promise she made. This will stir up a brutal confrontation between Beverly and her boyfriend when he refuses to let her go back to Derry. They showed such a confrontation within the old miniseries as well, and to be quite frank, I think they did a pretty good job with that specific thing, even for the old miniseries. But in the book, it's even more brutally described. They don't need to go much more brutal with such a scenario in this new film to get their point across, but I do think that they are gonna push the envelope a bit more. So when seeing those bruises on Beth's arm, it just reminded me that this film will definitely be tackling some truly adult stuff in more than just one way, cause it's also been said by the filmmakers that this concluding chapter will indeed be incorporating the whole gay crime scenario from the book. In regards to Mike Hanlon, the only loser that stayed behind in Derry, he has been rumored to be associated with drugs in this film in some capacity, but what that means exactly and how it'll come into play, I have no idea. We'll find out. The point is, all of the mentioned themes here are simply put very mature and harsh, and knowing that the kids are all grown up in this film, I think such themes will be portrayed a bit more visually up in your face, compared to the bit more subtle, written in between the lines sexual abuse that Beverly faced from her father as a child in the first film. Oh, and just a real quick mention about those amazing children they cast in Chapter 1. I know that the kids are gonna play a big part in the second chapter as well, and that's awesome because I love them all. I was not ready to say goodbye to them when Chapter 1 ended. That sucked so hard because you've just grown so attached to them. So I'm glad that they're all back for a significant portion of the film, as the director has said they will be. But I also still want the adult cast to be in the forefront this time around. This is their movie, in a sense. I want them to prove, they need to prove, that they're equally as good and all share just as much believable chemistry between each other as the kids did in the first movie. Some people seem to think that's gonna be very difficult, but I honestly don't. I think they're gonna pull it off just fine and rather easily. This cast is incredible. While this is a direct continuation of the first film, Chapter 2 must not be afraid to live in its own spirit, so to speak. They must prove with the adult cast that this film can be just as strong, if not even stronger than Chapter 1, and later on, as I said earlier, I will go deeper into why I believe this is more than possible for them to pull off. I'm sure that Chapter 2 will no doubt still have its charm, wonderful humor, and banter between the adult losers, as so it should, because it's still a very important element. But I also believe that we will get a darker film to go along with it, and Beverly's confrontation with her boyfriend will remind us pretty early on that we're dealing with some heavy adult shit. Now that all of that is out of the way, let's get back to the trailer again. So, Miss Kirsch and Beverly now sits down for a nice little chat and a cup of tea.
I do apologize. It gets so very hot here this time of year.
It's fine.
Well, you feel like you could just about die. But you know what they say about Derry.
Hmm.
No one who dies here ever really dies.
Okay, that's not creepy awkward at all. Think I'll just begin talking over this part already now. So, the thing I hear the most about this bit when roaming others' reactions and such online is basically just people saying, "Bitch, get the fuck out of there." And, yeah, that might not be such a bad idea, and I do understand why so many people keep speculating why the hell she would continue to stay there, and the answer is actually not as simplistic as it might seem, not in the world of it, that is, and I want to elaborate on that, but first, let's take a look at this image, which tells us about an underlying, clever, nasty message hidden between the lines. Beverly is looking over towards the window where 6 flies are seen forming a circle. Coincidence? I think not. The 6 flies on the window is of course meant to represent each and every one in the Losers Club, and at this point in the movie, Stan Uris of course is already dead. We know this. He kills himself in the tub right after receiving the call from Mike telling him that it has returned. 6 losers are left to kill. Oh, and what does the spider, among other things, eat? The fly. Now let me be clear, I don't think that director Andy Muschietti necessarily went with a giant spider this time around as it was in the miniseries and book as well. But if they will be fighting some spider or another nasty physical shape at one point, I do not believe this will be all there is to it, not this time around. Muschietti's got bigger and more spiritual things in mind, and I will talk much more about this later when the time comes. But the thought of a spider still having 6 remaining flies to squash and eat is kind of foreshadowing and creepy. I also want to touch upon Kirsch's line when saying, "You know what they say about Derry, no one who dies here ever really dies." Now, I want to see if I can creep you guys out just a tad bit more with the following thought in mind. Pennywise wants to torment these kids this time around. He truly wants revenge, in the words of Bill Skarsgård, right? And when thinking about Beverly's struggles with her father in Chapter 1, combined with the fueled hatred it now has towards the losers, imagine the horror when the old lady comes storming out from the kitchen later, maybe halfway morphed into Beverly's father's rotten corpse, maybe still with a cracked skull in his head. Think about that scenario. Look at the image on screen and once again dwell in the sentence that Miss Kirsch says to Beverly right before she freezes. No one in Derry ever really dies. Pennywise takes great pride in building up that moment. And that kinda does make my skin crawl. What about yours? And real quick, check out this image captured from the newly released featurette. It's Mr. Marsh with his wound in the skull. Look at the surroundings in that image with Mr. Marsh. The childhood home Beverly finds herself in with Kirsch, whom herself has already been dead for a long time, is very much falling apart. Nobody has been living there for decades. At one point, everything in the house, including Kirsch, turns into a more sort of real, haunting, adult, traumatic thing when Bev starts seeing things for what they really are. In the featurette, we even get to see Beverly running away from that evil, now probably her father, inside the house in real time. It's like she'll be reliving that violent episode with her father from the past, which there definitely is a good chance she forgot all about, and then suddenly it all comes back to her. We might even see Mr. Marsh rip apart the postcard that Bev eventually puts back together. Who knows? Alright, let's talk about what was mentioned earlier, about why Bev doesn't just get the hell up and leave right after receiving that death stare, cause clearly there's something weird going on, and at this point, Bev must remember something about the horrors they all went through, cause she's there, right? She's back in Derry. She got the call from Mike, she knows that it has returned, so why oh why doesn't the bells go off inside her goddamn head when this old woman starts being weird? Because even though Mike called her, it doesn't mean that she specifically remembers Pennywise, yet. which I can tell you already now that she doesn't. They let that one slip through some sources that attended Scare Diego this year, where they screened some longer clips, but I'll get back to that later. At this specific point in the movie, though, she hasn't even had a chance to reunite with the other losers yet. Her mind is still completely scrambled from the past, and I believe that this sequence here will be the first time that a true tidal wave of horrific memories starts flooding back to her. But before that happens, she's not really on her marks. I really think this will be a big part of what'll make for a darker theme running through Chapter 2, specifically that the adult losers have never been more afraid, more vulnerable, or weak. And this will also be present in a scene like this, where Bev is with Miss Kirsch. Beverly sits there in Miss Kirsch's living room, and we all wonder why she doesn't just leave. Because she's not quite alert. Even though it seems fairly obvious that she has every fucking reason to be. I know. Okay, Miss Kirsch, you can unfreeze now.
But tell me, how is it being back in Derry?
It's good. Strange.
Strange? Oh my.
Okay, again, to me, and I may very well be reading way too much into something like this, but I just feel in that tiny bit what I've already talked about, that Pennywise is messing with Beverly in the most hardcore way, and I just love it. So tell me, how does it feel being back in Derry? Beverly says it's good, adding that she thinks it's also strange. Like hell she thinks it's good to be back in Derry, come on. Strange? Yes. Miss Kirsch's response is, strange? Oh my. Like, yeah, whatever girl, please take notice to my infected rotten chest, why don't you? It just wants her to feel uneasy and completely toys with her. You can see Beth sort of waking up after noticing the old woman's infected chest. Next, a bell goes off in the kitchen.
I had some cookies in the oven before you came. Stay right there.
I shouldn't impose. I'm gonna...
No, I insist.
Miss Kirsch completely clicks back to the sweet old grandma here, telling Beverly that she has cookies in the oven. Ain't that nice? By the way, the cookies in the oven is a reference to what happens in the book, cause in that, Kirsch turns into a witch coming after Beverly later. Not just any witch, but the witch from Hansel and Gretel, a story that frightened the shit out of Beverly as a child. Eventually, the witch turns into Bev's father, which also happens in the old miniseries, and as I talked about earlier, I think that father part will be even more frightening than ever before in this new adaptation. Anyway, in the bit we just saw, Bev does want to leave here, telling Miss Kirsch that she doesn't want to impose any further, but of course, Miss Kirsch insists, and into the kitchen she goes, leaving Bev alone in the living room to look at some lovely family photos.
Your photos are lovely, Miss Kirsch. Are these your family?
My father came to this country with $14 in his pocket.
What did he do, Mrs. Kirsch?
My father joined the circus.
Oh man, there is so much to talk about in this. Holy shit, creepy old naked lady lurking. What's this? We're gonna talk about these pictures in a second, cause I really think that, shit, creepy old naked lady walking in the background. We'll get back to the nakedness of it all in a bit, and its potentially underlying deeper meaning as to why she is naked in the first place, cause yes, I do believe there is a deeper meaning there, but like I said, we'll get back to that in a bit. First off, let's just talk about that line from Miss Kirsch saying, my father came to this country with $14 in his pocket, and when Bev asks what he did for a living, Miss Kirsch replies, my father joined the circus. A lot of people online, whom I can only assume are not familiar with the source material, all seem to be asking the same question. Oh my god, is Miss Kirsch then Pennywise's daughter? Well, in a sense, I'll say yes, but ultimately not at all. It must be mentioned though that in the book, there's never any mention of any connection between Kirsch and Pennywise, but they seem to want to make a connection within this movie here, and I'm down with that, because I think I see exactly where they're going with this element, and that's where the explanation must come in. So, within the book, when Georgie has his confrontation with Pennywise in the sewer drain, Pennywise does introduce himself by saying, and I quote, I, Georgie, am Mr. Bob Gray, but you can call me Pennywise, the dancing clown. Now, this is not incorporated in the old miniseries, and it's not included in 2017's Chapter 1 either. I remember being a little bit irritated that they didn't incorporate that bit in the new film, cause why not, there's meaning behind it, so that bumped me out a little bit. However, they do seem to dig into that very thing here in Chapter 2, and because of that, I now understand why they left it out of Chapter 1. It was a very conscious decision, it would seem, and not just some oversight. They're saving all the backstory of this so-called Pennywise for this concluding chapter, which is very smart, actually. This is also parts why I strongly believe that Chapter 2 will be even deeper and really expand greatly upon the entire lore of it, so to speak. I do want to mention quickly, though, that in Chapter 1 there is an Easter egg to Bob Gray as seen when the Losers Club approaches the house on Neibolt Street just before the climax of the first film. Remember when Richie grabs the beer bottle and smashes it on the railing to the stairs leading up to the house? Just before he takes it from the ground, for a split second, we do get a good look at that bottle. Here, let me turn that around for you. Boom. Bob Gray's. Nice little reference there. In Chapter 2, it would seem that we're gonna get the full backstory though, cause who is this Bob Gray anyway, and why does Pennywise in the book introduce himself as this guy? How will he function inside of this film here? Well, in the book we learn later on that Bob Gray was a man whom back in the old days of Derry worked as a clown known by the name of Pennywise. During some point in Bob Gray's career, if you will, working as a clown in the circus, the entity of it at one point killed him and took over this man's appearance, as it was clear to it that such a clown seemed to have a lot of kids constantly running in circles around him. Nice way to lurk in the kiddies. Although Pennywise looks freaky as shit. Anyway, the clown known as Pennywise seems to have been sort of a mascot for the town of Derry for maybe the past 150 to 200 years, so others prior to the man known as Bob Gray had been portraying Pennywise before him. But it was during the time when Bob Gray had that job that it decided to kill this man, and ever since has become quite fond of this specific persona, which is why the kids of Derry most of the time sees him as such at one point or another. Again, in the book there's no connection between Kirsch and Bob Gray, but they're making this connection in the new film, and seeing how it doesn't really fuck with the lore in any damaging way, I dig it. It kinda only makes the story a bit richer in a sense. It's like in Chapter 1, they made a very smart decision, I think, to have Georgie simply missing, which gave Bill an extra emotional motivation to be looking for his kid brother with that tiny glimmer of desperate hope that he might just still be alive. Whereas in the book, they find Georgie at the drain, dead as dead can be, with his arm torn off. Period. He's dead. The change in 2017's big screen adaptation didn't ruin anything, it just actually made it better. We, as an audience, knew that Georgie, of course, did die in the very beginning, but Bill didn't. In the end, they stayed completely true to the source material, they just gave Bill that extra layer of motivation as a character. And that's smart. Here in Chapter 2, they seem to be doing the same thing regarding Bob Gray. We now will get that backstory which was missing from the first film, and in this new adaptation they connect Bob Gray to Miss Kirsch without really altering anything from the source. It just gives us that tiny bit of more connective tissue, and that's just smart as hell. So, Miss Kirsch talks about her father joining the circus, and we, for a second, freezes on a very striking old photo up on the wall, which seems to be very telling in a number of ways. Let's get the obvious out of the way. This is of course supposed to be the guy who was under the clown makeup back in the old days. That is supposed to be Bob Gray, in other words, Miss Kirsch's father in this adaptation, before he was eventually murdered by it. And that guy is also very clearly Bill Skarsgård, who, as we know, portrays Pennywise. Of course, they've somewhat manipulated Bill's appearance here for this old photo, but still, you just don't misplace that lip. That's Bill Skarsgård right there. Next, I noticed the little girl, and I say that with a tone because she looks weirdly not little. More like a grown-up woman inside of a little girl's body whom never really had a chance to be allowed to be a little girl. And she was probably robbed from a happy childhood, forced to grow up much faster, much like a certain Beverly Marsh kinda had to because of the abusive relationship she had with her father as a child. Look closer at that girl in the photo there, whom of course is meant to be Miss Kirsch as a child standing next to her father, Bob Gray. I know this is an old photo, but that right there looks to me like little Miss Kirsch back in the days was exposed to some beatings, more than likely from her father at home. Bob Gray was an asshole. Mr. Marsh was an asshole. And more than likely, Kirsch was too sexually abused by her father as a child. So between Kirsch and Bev, they're really not all that different, it would seem. There is some kind of dark, twisted poetry hidden in a lot of these things, and I think it deserves more credit than most people care to give, or let alone even care to think about. And that is my perfect angle leading into this, because as mentioned earlier, a lot of people have been asking why the hell Miss Kirsch needs to be naked to begin with. What's the purpose, really? Sure, even on a superficial level, it's just plain freaky and weird, like something out of a David Lynch movie, even though I'm not quite sure that he himself always knows exactly why the hell he creates the visuals he does. But Andy Muschietti, the director of these two It films, does seem to know exactly why he creates the visuals he does, and while it's freaky as hell, it has underlying deeper meanings. So when I see a naked Miss Kirsch walking around in her dark-ass kitchen, as coming up in the next bit, I don't see it as a superficial thing. I see it as a tragic, sad, running cold down my spine kind of thing that all ties into the deep, real horrors of Chapter 2. As I mentioned, Miss Kirsch was more than likely, just like Beverly, sexually abused as a child, as in not just occasionally beaten at home, and that's the link between Bev and Miss Kirsch, right? Now I know that all of this is just it manifesting stuff that isn't really there, including Kirsch that died a long time ago, but whom in this movie universe I do believe was a living human being once, and that she was the daughter of Bob Gray. These underlying messages were also as strongly present in the first film, like this bit here. What does this tiny drop of blood really mean? I'm sure that many would think it to be residue from the blood that came spraying out from the sink earlier on in the first movie, right? When really, it's a lot deeper than that. It's of course much more explicit in the book, but that doesn't mean that it's not there for people to notice if they care to. Now, let me be clear, I'm not telling anyone that they're stupid or idiotic if they don't make these connections, not at all. I'm just saying that if one wants to, there's a lot more in Andy Muschietti's It than what might just be seen on a superficial level. That drop of blood on the floor represents not residue from the blood fest earlier on in the film. It represents Beverly having her period for the first time, which is mentioned in the book as well. I know we see Beverly in Chapter 1 shopping for Tampaxes much earlier on, but the drop of blood on the floor much later in the film is so subtle. So why is that important in a so-called horror movie to incorporate in the first place? Well, for a number of reasons, really. For one, it tells us about a girl that's slowly stepping into adulthood during that summer, and in this very case, feeling very impure about it because of her abusive relationship with her father. It's the same with what is coming out from the sink, grabbing Beverly in that bloodbath scene. How many of you, honestly, have thought to think deeper about what the hell it really is grabbing hold of her there? It's the symbol of her own hair, which she cut off even earlier in the film. And why did she cut it off? Because her father, just prior to that scene, stood in front of her out in the hallway touching her hair right after noticing the Tampaxes that she'd come home with. And his response was simply, "Tell me you're still my little girl." Dude, your daughter clearly just got her period, but what you want to know is essentially if she's been having sex with boys at this point. I mean, that is what is hidden between the lines when he says that. Yes, Mr. Marsh is a very fucked up individual, let's just leave it at that. All while we hear Sophia Lillis portraying Beverly in a very strong performance of hers, whisper to herself, "This is what you did." She feels dirty, and she doesn't want to be her father's little girl. She rebels, so to speak. Later on, that hair she cut off comes out from the sink again, grabbing her. The blood has symbolism to her period, which, because of the abusiveness from her father, she secretly feels dirty about. And the hair grabbing her, which the father got all horny on while smelling to, is basically symbolism of, "You think you're gonna get away from me, Beverly?" Meaning her father. She can cut off her hair all she wants. The problem is, you can't run away from the fears inside yourself. All of it has deeper meaning, even in a sequence like that, which easily works even without having to think about all that stuff, but it's there. The horrors of Muschietti's films are anything but stupid, and I respect the hell out of this man for making such, shall we say, updates to his vision of it and the underlying messages between it all. We should all get down on our hands and knees thanking him for bringing this story to life in such a deep way, because honestly, he didn't really have to do that. Real quick before we move on with this final bit, I love the nods Machete seems to want to give classic horror from the past. Like for instance, I get a lot of The Shining vibes in a good way. Of course, that's also a Stephen King book, so it stays in the family. This picture here makes me instantly think of the twins from the old Shining movie, and I kinda doubt that's coincidental. Not that I mean the director wants to make some sort of serious connection between the two, the twins in The Shining and these two seen here, but it's a similar thing and it just helps create that creepy mood, And Miss Kirsch creeping around back there also reminds me of the naked lady in The Shining. Alright, with all that in mind, which we've touched upon up until now, let's give Miss Kirsch her final grand, freakish entrance. So take it away, Kirsch.
I was always Daddy's little girl. What about you? Are you still his little girl, Beverly? Are you?
There, at last. We are now all caught up on where it kinda started. For the sake of wanting to keep the same feel going for the rest of this video, I'm not gonna have the original music play in the background here. Right after the title card that reads on September 6th, oh and by the way, here in Denmark, among some other countries, we get the movie on the 5th. And if a midnight screening is also taken into the account, that actually means we get it the night between the 4th and the 5th. So when thinking about the time difference too, that means we get it a day and a half before the US. I don't know, I just kind of felt I needed to throw that in your faces. Sorry guys. We move into this final action-heavy montage of the teaser, and even though it flies by rather quickly, there's still some very striking and interesting visuals to emphasize upon. Know that I will be leaving out certain images here, not because I ain't gonna talk about them, but because these same images either repeat themselves within the final trailer as well, or at the very least are just slightly different images, yet essentially showcasing the exact same thing going on. Therefore, I'll hold back on what I have to say about these specific images for the final trailer talk coming up later. In full context, I just felt it was the best way to go about it. I'm also not gonna talk about this final montage here exactly as it played out in the teaser itself. Instead, I've tried orchestrating all of those rapidly paced images in such a way that we'll go through them together in a more chronological order, like how I also believe it's gonna play out within the film itself. So to put it all in an order, separating everything that the teaser's final full-blown montage had to offer us, it made sense for me to start out with the image you're looking at right now. 'Cause when the losers all starts coming back to Derry before they ever have their Chinese restaurant reunion later on that same night, each and every one of them roams the town a bit. And here, we see good old Bill Denbrough roaming the streets of his old neighborhood, standing on the road and looking into the drain where his kid brother was dragged in by Pennywise back in the days. The ghostly figure of Georgie without a face showing is bone-chillingly beautiful in the darkest way. We see him extending his arms out towards his now adult older brother, and this is all very captivating and intriguing to me. First of all, this is just one small example of the writer and director having incorporated something that is not really a part of the book. Even so, one can clearly sense that it totally fits within the narrative and emotional core of the story, so I welcome all of it with open arms. Maybe what we see in the teaser is just the tip of the iceberg of what'll actually go down during that sequence. Maybe this seemingly harmless vision suddenly turns into something a lot more frightening. Nonetheless, each and every one of the losers will have their own experiences upon their return to Derry before reuniting that same night. Bev will of course prior have had her Miss Kirsch experience, Richie will have had his own experience, which I'll talk more about later, and so on and so forth. The evening will eventually come around, and here we see some of the losers reuniting outside of the Chinese restaurant. Ben and Richie hugs it out, with Beverly standing on the sidelines. We then move inside, where, if you pay closer attention, you get the sense that Richie just hit that big dinner gong right before he says, "This meeting of the Losers Club has officially begun." And of course it is, now that he's there, right? Never mind the absence of a certain Stan Uris, 'cause Richie trash-mouthed Tosher's there. What more do you need? God, I love it so much. They'll greet each other and then, as fans know, proceed to have the reunion dinner, which is a very iconic sequence from the book and one I can't wait to see how plays out in its entirety. It'll also be the first time that we will see how the adult losers, the adult cast, bounces off one another, how their chemistry will be, etc. At some point, after some not-so-fortunate fortune cookies has been opened by our losers around the dinner table, that night will suddenly take a very unpleasant turn. Eventually, we will see the light of the next day with no one at this point having been exposed to any real harm, cause here is Mike taking them all for a little stroll down memory lane, guiding them through the empty streets of Derry. All of this, of course, is bound to happen after that iconic restaurant sequence, otherwise that whole reunion's purpose goes straight out the window and really makes no sense anymore. So the following day, Mike takes them out and about, bringing them up to speed on what's been going on ever since the return of It. The past will no doubt also be discussed even further here, triggering stuff inside all of them to remember more and more of who they once were, and an image like this here beautifully captures that. As already mentioned, Derry apparently seems very empty. It gives off that ghost town vibe, which I love. It just oozes atmosphere. Some people are asking about this though, like, why are the streets so empty in the center of town? And I think it's because during the days when the losers reunite in this film, it also happens to clash with the town's so-called, and I quote, Derry Canal Days Festival. So most of Derry's weird-ass grown-ups, and of course the children, are most likely spending their days in that carnival amusement park setting down near the canal, leaving the center of Derry fairly empty. I feel that this film, when the losers first arrive back in Derry, will all take place over the course of an elongated weekend or something. It would make sense for the losers to hook up during such a time frame, which would also have the town's festivities be at its highest. I know it sounds maybe a bit weird, but to me, there's something cozy, classic, and definable when you seclude a film in such a way, if you can at all follow me. It's like in the first movie, which took place during the summer vacation within the boundaries of that spooky little town. It's cozy in a creepy good way, you know? It's the same with classics like Halloween, Gremlins, and other newer films like Disturbia, or last year's Summer of '84, which is a very good little horror film all on its own. It's the same with Stranger Things, where it all happens within that town during a summer vacation, or a Halloween or Christmas setting as seen in previous seasons. It just makes it more memorable and, yeah, definable because of it. In the case of Chapter 2 here, we're gonna hook up with the adult losers during what I think will be an elongated weekend clashing with the days of the Derry Canal Festival times. Atmosphere, people. Atmosphere. Gotta love it. This following bit, I'll admit I'm not quite sure when exactly will be thrown into the mix in this specific adaptation, but it definitely is included because Machete teased it on Instagram over a year ago. At some point, the losers all end up in Derry's townhouse, a little hotel in the outskirts of the city where I believe these images are from. One might be tempted to think it's from the restaurant sequence, but something about the bit out of focus lamp and what looks to be a cozy chair in the background there doesn't quite fit for me if that indeed is supposed to be the restaurant. Bill standing with Beverly here telling her that we can do this but we have to stick together is from that hotel sequence later on. Moving on along in the teaser's montage, we also get this very interesting image here with Mike Hanlon holding a slingshot. It sure looks like it, and when looking at the surroundings with grass on the ground plus other plant life behind Mike there, clearly this ain't the sewers. I'll connect this one further down the line to something else seen in the final trailer when we get to that. We also get a bunch of awesome and truly striking images from the climax in the sewers in this teaser, but for the sake of combining all of it in a cohesive chronological order as well as possible, all the sewer stuff too I'll save for the final of this video, so none of the climax stuff will be discussed before we get to the end of the next trailer. Therefore, we now jump directly over to this last bit of the teaser. This beautiful little girl who for some reason will get bruised on her chin before this next thing happens is more than likely doomed. We see her under what looks to be the stairs/benches of some sort of stadium, maybe? Here she encounters a tiny little ball of light. Deadlights, anyone? Maybe she sees this ball of light even earlier on up above, which she then follows down underneath the stadium, leading her right into the presence of Pennywise, catching this ball of light, emerging from the shadows with his Winnie the Pooh sounding line, "Hello," which is so creepy. And there are a few foreign TV spots floating around out there that almost bring nothing new to the table, and I don't even want to incorporate them. But some of them do have a few nuggets of new info and stuff that I'm gonna take advantage of here. In the background of one of these TV spots, you do hear Pennywise cry, and then the girl comes in saying, "Why are you crying?" And then we hear Pennywise say, off screen, mind you, so it could be edited, but we hear him say, "Nobody wants to play anymore. Play a game with me, would ya?" What will this little girl's fate be? We'll soon find out. This was nonetheless an effective way to close out that first teaser trailer. Let me start out this segment by laying out the following, so follow me here. This final trailer spans for 2 minutes and 20 seconds before cutting to the title, which ain't considered footage. Out of those 2 minutes and 20 seconds, approximately 25 seconds is either footage from Chapter 1 or footage we've already seen in the first teaser trailer, alright? So that means within this newest and final trailer, there's really only 1 minute and 55 seconds of legit new footage, and that's it. Out of those 1 minute and 55 seconds, they spent 21 whole seconds on the sewer bit in the beginning alone, along with the film's studio logos coming across the screen. And think about it. What do we really see in those 21 seconds of the sewer? Nothing, really. Just a guy splashing around in water and then Pennywise standing there reaching out a helping hand. So now take those 21 seconds away from the already trimmed down 1 minute and 55 seconds, and we're now down to just 1 minute and 34 seconds of new footage, okay? Then let's now take into account the sequence of Bill inside of the funhouse. That bit alone takes up a whole 30 seconds with the following title card that reads on September 6th. And again, what do we really see in that funhouse bit? Not much when you really think about it. Bill walks around trying to locate a kid. Pennywise says, "Hello," which is the exact same soundbite we've already heard in the teaser, and we then pan down to see Pennywise with a perverted long tongue sticking out. A further 30 seconds was spent on that whole funhouse bit, which now means we end up with a remaining trailer of just 1 minute and 4 seconds of rapidly paced new images. You can do all of this math yourself if you like, or you can just take my word for it. It's the same with the teaser trailer. 98% of that whole thing was one elongated sequence with Bevan Kirsch, and even that sequence is of course trimmed down. The Bevan Kirsch bit of the teaser lasted for 2 whole minutes and 16 seconds. The funhouse, 30 seconds. It's clever of them to spend so much time on just one bit out of a trailer's full 2 minutes and 20 seconds, just for the sake of building some tension, which it certainly does. And here's exactly where the creators of these trailers were thinking smartly, because while it builds tension for us, the viewers, to see these elongated sequences, it also takes the viewer's attention away from just how much of the trailer's full running time they actually spend on just one bit alone. I mean, in those 30 seconds of the funhouse bit, they could have shown us a hell of a lot more new footage from various places in the new movie, thereby spilling their beans, but they chose not to. And that's because they're saving it all for the theater experience. You better believe that's the truth. Oh, but of course, as this was the final trailer, and final full trailers are almost always 2 minutes and 20 seconds or 30 seconds long, they had to fill it up with something. And instead of throwing everything in there like so many other studio films trailers tend to do, they spent the majority of the trailer's running time with longer bits of footage from a few selected sequences, which in the end did not show that much. So between those elongated sequences in the final trailer, plus the imagery already shown in the teaser trailer, and also taking into account some footage from Chapter 1, hawking up some space in there, they've kind of tricked us all into thinking we've seen much more than we really have. So let's just try combining the 1 minute and 55 seconds of legit new footage in the final trailer here with the entirety of the teaser trailer's full 2 minutes and 50 seconds, and we will now have seen in total only 4 minutes and 45 seconds of It Chapter 2, which in and of itself has been given an explosive theatrical running time of 2 hours and 45 minutes. Which means that as of right now, there's still like 2 hours and 40 whole minutes of this film which has yet to see the light of day. We really haven't seen jack shit yet, and it's all the more awesome because of it. Sure, there will be some TV spots coming up, including the one I was quick to incorporate a bit of just in time, but with all in mind of which I just talked about because I clearly have no life, I don't think we'll see much more new. There seems to be a pattern there of what the studio has allowed us to see. Unlike with a certain Pet Sematary movie, the footage shown to the public of Chapter 2 is carefully chosen and constructed. Now let's dig into this final trailer. We open up with a beautiful aerial shot hovering over the trees and streets of Derry below, mimicking the same shot from the first movie, while an unknown voice is heard saying, "Something happens to you when you leave this town." The music in the very beginning is distant, subtle, dreamy, and quite beautiful. Upon first viewing, this instantly drew me in and reminded me of the incredible emotionality that Machete so beautifully brought to life in his first film, and furthermore reminded me that these movies just aren't your standard typical empty horror films. We cut over to a slowed down flashback to the summer of '89, and we see Bill on his bike, Hi-Yo Silver, with Beth sitting behind him, resting her head comfortably towards his back. It's a beautiful shot. The voiceover continues. The farther away, the hazier it all gets. Then we cut over to what is revealed to be grown-up Mike Hanlon inside of what I no doubt believe to be the Derry Library, where he now works. Mike's voice continues. But me, I never left. With a thunderous sound, we cut to a familiar brick wall plastered with missing children's posters blowing in the wind in a ghost town where people choose to forget. The vibe is instantly felt, with his concluding words being, "I remember all of it." And boom, the trailer makes its first shift towards darkness as we cut to the sewers where a very recognizable eerie sound effect is heard. I'm just gonna say it right off the bat, this trailer is so fucking badass on so many fronts, and it perfectly escalates more and more as it goes along. Anyway, water starts erupting through the sewer system. Next, we cut to a man in the midst of splashing water with a seemingly banged up face screaming for help. This is, without a doubt, Adrian Mellon, the young gay man from the book and the life partner of Don Haggerty. Adrian, for whatever weird reason, grew fond of Derry despite the violent homophobic attitude that goes on within it. In the end, though, he does agree to leave town at request from his husband, but right before, the two attend the Derry Canal Days Festival where, on their way home, they are jumped by a bunch of homophobic teen losers beating them up. In Adrian's case, the teenagers throws him off the bridge, and he meets his fate with Pennywise, but I need to hold off from discussing this further until a bit later. You'll see. Anyway, here Pennywise suddenly stands, reaching out a hand with creepy glowing eyes, and we cut to the film studio's logo, once again accompanied by that eerie dee-nee-nee-nee-nee sound we all know so well. Oh, and by the way, it's very clear that while we do hear the standard already used 100 times before laugh by Pennywise, that he's not actually laughing within that bit when reaching out for Adrian Mellon. No, that just seems to be in there for the effect and for the sake of the trailer. Pennywise is really just standing there looking creepy as hell, and I'm fairly certain that's also how it's going to be in the movie. We will get back to the Adrian side of things, but for now let's move on. After this, once again there's a shift, and the trailer starts slowly amping up its intensity through eager but subtle notes of strings like on a violin or something, similar to what was sometimes heard in Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight whenever things started intensifying, and I do mean that in the best possible way. We see Mike leading the troop as they all walk on the same path nearing the Barrens, again matching the exact same shot as seen in the first film. Cut back to the Chinese restaurant and Bev making a toast to the Losers Club. They have some fun, in between comes some imagery from Chapter 1, which I ain't gonna talk too much about that, but from a marketing perspective, it's smart that they intertwined all that stuff throughout. Anyway, Mike cuts in saying, "We made an oath." And this is where those very impressive fadings between the kids and adult counterparts start coming in. I use the word impressive because it is pretty damn impressive just how much they all look like the kids they're portraying. You can almost see the child actors in all of their faces. They all look great, but I gotta say that it is crazy just how much, especially that I can see little cute chubby Jeremy Ray Taylor through the face of Jay Ryan playing adult Ben Hanscom. Just wow. And Jack Dylan Grazer? Man, that kid must have had a time machine, cause what the fuck? James Ransone playing adult Eddie looks like the spitting image of little Jack Grazer. It's crazy to me. And in regards to Mike during those fading transitions, as I said I would be doing, I would now like to show you this shot again from the teaser, where he's holding the slingshot. That shot and this one here from the final trailer are both from the same sequence. Same setting, same clothes, and because I also got the chance to utilize footage from the newly released featurette, then what you see here is also a part of that same sequence. He even has the slingshot at hand here. Then we cut to this. Mike is clearly there, circling the crime scene where Adrian Mellon was earlier thrown off the bridge, and that's what it's all about. I also believe this sequence will be one of the first things happening in the film, and that Mike is the first grown-up loser we'll see on screen, which makes total sense. Here in the featurette, we see this brick beam with the words "Come Home" repeated, and more than likely written in blood. We see the carnival in the far background, and there is an ambulance on the bridge right there. But that's not all, because when combining the images from the trailers with Mike in the slingshot to what has now been seen in this featurette, I believe something quite crazy will take place here. By the end of that sequence, somehow I think Mike won't be the least bit in doubt about the return of it, not just because of the written words on that beam or him probably witnessing a torn-up Adrian Mellon. No. I think that Mike might just be taking on it all on his own in one form or another sometime during this sequence surrounding the crime scene where Adrian was killed. Because as we see in this shot of Mike with the slingshot, he's clearly up against something. I mean, he ain't reacting the way he is here in the teaser having the slingshot out if it was just because of him seeing that "Come Home" writing on the beam there. Something else is clearly going on here, something we haven't seen yet, and I believe it will have no problem showing itself to Mike because in this movie, Pennywise wants them to know, and as Bill Skarsgård has said in the featurette, he misses them. So yeah, what will Mike see here exactly other than writing on a beam? Interesting. Back to the restaurant again, and Mike saying we didn't stop it. Around the table, things go from cozy to some serious reflecting, and Beth says, Pennywise. Now, remember I said earlier that she wouldn't remember Pennywise from the get-go, and that they spilled that bean during Scare Diego when screening a longer clip for the audience? Well, this would be it. Sources from Scare Diego described when seeing the extended reunion clip that a tidal wave of fear seems to be rushing over Beverly here when reminded of Pennywise the dancing clown. And really, even in the trailer, when you think about it, she mentions his name as if it comes as a shock to her. Multiple individual sources claim, and you don't have to take my word for it, you can Google this shit, but multiple people are describing that clip from Scare Diego that it should be fairly clear to the audience that Beverly doesn't remember Pennywise until something clicks during that dinner, which would also explain why the deepest of fears might not have been in the forefront of her mind even when Kirsch started acting freaky. And maybe it's not only her that doesn't remember Pennywise right away, I mean, who knows? So just because Mike tells them through the phone that it has returned, it might not necessarily mean this time around that they will remember all just with the same, including Pennywise, which I find fascinating as hell. I mean, haven't you ever had one of those unpleasant dreams where the next day you wake up and you can't quite pin down what it was that you dreamt, but the feeling is still there in your stomach? 'Cause I have had those dreams on multiple occasions, and that's why I also find the idea fascinating if not all the losers necessarily remember Pennywise with the same, but they just have that feeling in their stomachs upon their return to Derry. And again, the line spoken from Mike in the beginning of the trailer saying, "Something happens when you leave this town. The farther away, the hazier it all gets," I think is something he tells them during the reunion dinner as well. Both Eddie and Ben clearly does not like the ugly turn that this reunion dinner just took. Of course, none of them dicks it, but in this footage, it's Ben and Eddie's faces we see, and it's actually kind of funny to see their expressions, especially Ben's. It's just like, oh fuck, Penny's back. We now cut to an aerial shot of the town fair, or parts of it at least, and off-screen someone concludes Beth's Pennywise line by saying, "The clown." And thanks to the new featurette, it is clarified what I honestly already suspected, that it is indeed grown-up Eddie speaking the clown line. It just fits, as it was also young Eddie that spoke those exact words in the first film and in those trailers. They do seem very purposefully to want to mimic a lot of references and shots from the first film. It's a nice way to sort of tie the two together in a little bow. And here, enter good old Bill inside of the funhouse, and clearly we hear James McAvoy saying, "We can't let it happen again." This is also very clearly words spoken from a whole other scene in the movie. Maybe during a bound-to-happen little speech from Bill to the other losers out in front of the Neibolt house at one point. That would make sense, but with a 245-hour movie, who the hell knows? Anyway, this is where we enter the long funhouse bit with everything creepy lit up by neon lights. It also gives us another great homage to Tim Curry's Pennywise as seen through these fellas here swinging from the ceiling. Love it. Bill finally locates the kid running towards him but smashes into a window right in front of him, separating the two. Enter Pennywise and his tongue. Love how the kid doesn't scream right at first but rather looks at Penny in numbness with wide open eyes, not quite sure what to think yet. I mean, he does find himself inside of a funhouse with the outer entrance having you walk, literally, into the mouth of a clown. So is this all just a part of the funhouse experience, just for gags, or is this something else entirely? I think that's just about what's going through this kid's mind for a couple of seconds before realizing that this sure as hell ain't for gags. Well, for Pennywise it is, of course. Anyway, this is where the smart, quick editing comes in, as I touched upon earlier. Pennywise laughs, and the glass goes from intact to cracked in the blink of an eye, and then the boy screams. I've heard that the longer clip of this sequence they screened at Scare Diego showed Pennywise repeatedly smashing his head towards the glass in an obviously maniacal way, which explains the cracking. We just don't see that in this trailer. The kid doesn't start screaming until Pennywise begins using his head for a sledgehammer, which makes perfect sense, otherwise the kid would have started screaming much earlier. It's not until Pennywise begins to wreck shop that it sets off this kid screaming. And this is not only where Bill starts to kick the window full force, it's also when the clip at Scare Diego ended as well. The fate of this boy and what happens remains to be seen. Want to hear a theory of mine? Cool. As Pennywise starts cracking the window from one side, Bill of course starts kicking from the other side, where the Scare Diego clip ended. Now, in between is the kid, stuck. But who will reach him first? Bill or Pennywise? And here's my theory for a possible outcome. I'm not saying this is what's gonna happen, I am just a fan speculating. But I think that the bit where Bill looks absolutely desperate and sad, pleading Pennywise to leave this kid alone, really will not happen until after Pennywise have already cracked through and are now standing with the boy firmly in his grip. Bill, who gave up kicking the glass after Pennywise reached the boy first, now stands there, numb, staring desperately at Pennywise, knowing that there will be no mercy shown. This is where I could see the please line from Bill first come in. Now, this is also where things might turn truly shocking and sinister as hell with everything going on between the lines in the subtext of it all. Imagine Pennywise gracing this kid's face just like he did with young Bill's face at the end of the first movie, when Pennywise said he'd leave the other losers alone and only take Bill if they would just leave them be. Imagine Bill standing there completely helpless, unable to save this boy, whom by the way I've heard will previously have been seen to live in Bill's childhood home, so him and the kid would have already shared a scene together earlier on, which makes for a bit more personal connection. Bill knows he couldn't save his kid brother back in the days, and he also knows that Pennywise knows that. Penny's just standing there, grinning, holding on to the kid, knowing every little horrific thought going through Bill's mind in that moment, and he'll be enjoying the shit out of it. The director has said where Chapter 1 was about fear, Chapter 2 really is about trauma, and such a scenario here would fit perfectly. The most gruesome thing I could imagine happen in this sequence would be if Pennywise ends up taunting Bill a little after having broken through the glass and standing with the boy spouting off shit about how he couldn't even be there for his own brother, whose arm, by the way, tasted so good. Pennywise now slowly starts stretching out this kid's arm while looking at Bill with pure evil delight in its eyes. Bill from the other side of the glass pleads for Pennywise to show mercy, whom instead just starts mimicking to nap into this kid's arm in similar fashion as he teased to do with young Eddie back in the Neibolt house in Chapter 1. Only this time, Pennywise does not stop at teasing. With one final glaring grin at Bill, he sinks his teeth into this kid's arm and ends up ripping it off entirely, leaving the kid screaming in agony on the floor, bleeding out. Bill only goes even more numb, with Pennywise grinding the torn arm in his hand up towards the glass right in front of Bill. "How does it feel, Billy boy?" History will have just repeated itself. Now, I can understand if some are thinking, no effing way. They're not gonna take it that far. Bill is gonna save the day this time around, and I get that. Again, I ain't saying this will be the end of that sequence either, but let me just remind people that this film has been given an even harder R rating than the first film. It sounds like they're gonna push the boundaries. And I mean, it would fit the bill, no pun intended. We're dealing with the traumas of the past as seen through the eyes and minds of adults this time. And what better way, honestly, to truly disturbingly amp things up and give people something they just didn't expect to see with a no mercy kind of scenario like that. It's dark. It's sinister. But sadly, it also makes a hell of a lot of sense with this heartbreaking subtext and strong themes of the film. Moving further into the trailer, which really amps up the intensity more and more here, utilizing loud, epic-sounding horns. A little Hans Zimmer, but I love it. It's definitely nailing it down that this film means serious business. I mean, this is just not normal for your so-called horror film. We see the adult losers are strolling down at the Barrens as seen from afar through the exact same tube where the title in the first movie was also seen fading into frame right after the killing of Georgie. We get a quick image of the adult losers out in front of the Neibolt house at night, fading over to a flash of the young losers at that same spot in the first film. Pennywise's voice comes over. "For 27 years I dreamed of you. I craved you. I missed you." In the words of the producer and sister to the director, these aren't just your regular victims to Pennywise, not this time around. It's so cool. As we move on, we see imagery from what is no doubt Juniper Hill, where a survived Henry Bowers is now institutionalized. A floating red balloon is seen hovering outside the window, following Bowers as he's being dragged away by personnel in the midst of all the inmates making an uproar. And something tells me that Bowers will also start that uproar. He looks delighted. In the book, Bowers is ultimately blamed for most of the murders that occurred back in the days. However, when doctors declares his mental state as downright decaying, he is ultimately deemed mentally incompetent and thus does not need to stand trial. Instead, he goes straight to Juniper Hill, where in this movie, as we see, he would have stayed since the summer of '89, or close to that. In this film, at some point, he'll be called back into action, if you will, by Pennywise, promising him the revenge he always wanted if only he agreed to help Pennywise reach their common simple goal: kill the losers. Easy. We also see adult Bill alone out in front of the Neibolt house, very reminiscent to what happened in Chapter 1, because of course, shortly after, the other losers will arrive, again as seen here, plus in this image released through Entertainment Weekly. More than likely, for a split second, they'll try to stop Bill from going inside, and again, like in the first film, Bill will give a little heartfelt speech convincing the other losers to eventually join him. It just makes sense. This next thing we see is very interesting to me, but not so much because of the more obvious stuff, which is cool too. And we'll talk about the obvious stuff first. So, we find ourselves inside of the Neibolt house, right? Richie is there pointing a flashlight towards a very familiar refrigerator where Pennywise back in the days came out from going after Eddie when he was at his weakest with a broken arm. Look to the right of the image there. Notice Bill trying to comfort Eddie, who's standing there looking nervous as hell with his newly retrieved horrible memory of that damn fridge back in his mind again. Who could blame him? I'd shit myself too. Now here's where it gets interesting to me, because one would probably assume that this is during the climax, right before they head further down into the sewers, right? I mean, initially, that's what I thought. Also, we just prior, in the trailer, saw Bill and the rest of the losers outside of the house at night, so it just seems natural that this here is what follows inside. But take a closer look up in the right corner above Eddie's head. Tell me that isn't daylight vaguely coming through a cloth hanging in front of a little window leading to the outside. You see it shine through, the light even reflecting on the back wall as well. So is this really from the climax? Because even more evident later in the video, the losers will be visiting the Neibolt house twice in this film, just like they did in the first film. And though this image here in a flash doesn't come on screen until the very last bit of this trailer, I'll throw it in. That image is the losers outside of the Neibolt house during daytime. I mean, you've seen this. That much is clear. And here I'll also use the featurette Warner Brothers just released last week. It doesn't show very much, but a few snippets of behind-the-scenes stuff glue things together here. We see them running out from the house and something is exploding from inside. Oh, and one member is missing. Eddie. They seem to want to make it look like Eddie dies here because he didn't make it out in time, but as we see in the climax stuff coming up, Eddie is there with them, so he can't die here. But more than likely, Richie thinks he's dead here and clearly reacts emotional outside the house after this explosion as seen in both the trailer and in this featurette shot here. Mike and Ben are holding him back, and I also have a feeling, again like in the first movie, that Richie will be mad at Bill too. It'll be something like, "You dragged us all back into this shit," right after they nearly get out alive. But also, we see them all back there at night too, so my question ultimately is, which of the Neibolt house visits comes first in this film? The nighttime visit or the daytime visit? Or do they enter during night and then come out when it's daylight and where these shots are from? Is what we're seeing here really stuff from the very final after they get out of the sewers and Richie gets emotional knowing Eddie died? Somehow that just doesn't fit, and the ending kind of explains that one. Oh well, we'll see. Moving on to this image, which was also seen in the teaser trailer and is one of those that we haven't yet discussed. So what's going on here? Well, apparently a shitload of red balloons completely not following the laws of gravity here are seen coming from up above the bridge, floating not down and landing on the water, but instead going down just underneath the bridge, simply passing through. And this imagery, aside from being gorgeous looking, makes me think of one specific thing. And once again, it's just theorizing, it's fan speculation that I might very well be totally wrong about, but it is one that requires an introduction. So, we all remember how the first movie opened, with the introductory of Bill and Georgie getting a feel for their brotherly bond. We see Georgie in the basement getting a taste of what he's afraid of. Georgie then goes outside alone in the rain with the paper boat made by his brother. It disappears into the drain and Pennywise shows up from below with the boat in his hand. The two then ensues in a conversation going from rather cute to intense to truly horrifying. All of this with creepy child singing heard from down below as Penny lures in this kid, adding to it a sound mix that constantly increases up till the very moment when Georgie finally reaches for his boat and Pennywise then grabs his arm and we know the rest. The rain pours down. The old bitch on the porch that first ignored everything when she saw this kid on his hands and knees looking into the drain comes out from her house again right after the killing, and now she reacts when spotting blood on the road. But heck, even the cat here seems to be more worried than her. Anyway, she goes inside and more than likely she's calling the police. Screen goes black. Those eerie, otherworldly sound effects starts echoing themselves as we open up inside of the tube. And as children's creepy lulling starts intensifying, again, the title fades up further down the line. The camera flies straight through and out into the open. That entire sequence to the movie was intense and masterfully built up. That's how you capture an audience's attention. That is how it's done. So, what the hell does that have to do with the image of the red balloons under the bridge, dude? Well, maybe nothing, but possibly something, because when I looked a bit closer at the image, something started to come to my mind. This film definitely needs just as intense and just as masterful an opening as the first film had to really sink its teeth into the audience. Anything less will feel wrong and lackluster. This image here with the balloons I think might very well be a part of the opening to Chapter 2, and then I thought, oh damn. Now I'm stuck. Now I have to go all out and let you guys inside of my mind to hear what I could see be an absolutely great opening for Chapter 2, a vision that is still very much in line with the novel. Fan speculation, guys, and you don't have to agree, that's totally fine, just hear me out. Imagine if the entire film opens up over the carnival and we cut to the introductory of a certain gay man named Adrian and his boyfriend Don walking around in the carnival setting one night during the Derry Canal Festival. The chains of light seen here also pretty much tells us that we're right around that place. Maybe we get to see the gay couple on the Ferris wheel having fun, laughing. Maybe we get to see them sit down at a table sharing a candy floss or a bucket of popcorn while Don tells Adrian how happy he was that he finally agreed to move away with him from this god-forsaken town. Adrian smiles, telling Don that he loves him and that in the end their relationship is what is most important to him, so of course he would move with him. Maybe Adrian finishes by telling Don something like, "But you gotta admit, this is a fun way to spend our last night here in Derry, right?" The two laugh, discreetly holding hands across the table. Love and carnival fun is in the air. From behind, a group of bullies come into frame, laughing and pushing their bucket of popcorn on the floor. "Get the fuck out of here, faggots!" They continue walking away, laughing at them. Adrian especially looks hurt. Don looks at him, saying something like, "Don't let him get to you." Adrian tries to man up, smiling to Don, saying, "I won't." Don continues, "Let's get out of here. Tomorrow morning, you and I were leaving this shithole for good." Adrian smiles. The two are seen rising from their table. Don notices, a bit further away, that the bullies harassing them just a couple of moments earlier are now all standing near a food cart, still laughing at them. Maybe one of them simulates sucking the weenie in his hot dog or something. That would be a typical Stephen King thing, by the way. Adrian doesn't notice any of this, but Don does, and through an act of rebellism, he very purposefully takes Adrian by the hand, looking careless towards the bullies as he walks away proud with his boyfriend. This, however, is only shown to provoke the bullies, as their laughter slowly disappears, with their expressions instead starting to display straight-up disgust, perfectly capturing everything evil and hateful about the town. Cut to Adrian and Don, alone, walking towards a certain bridge with the lighted-up carnival they just left seen in the far background, where roller-coasting distant screams of joy are heard as well. Don is rambling on and on about how great the rest of their lives are gonna be, in a very uplifting and enthusiastic way, cheering Adrian up. Suddenly, unknown to Adrian and Don, whom are nearing the bridge, in the shadows, a group of people are seen coming up from behind. The gay couple are chuckling as they walk out on the bridge. Emerging from behind, accelerating in speed, coming into the light from the lampposts above, are the bullies, led by the individual who sucked the weenie in his hot dog. He goes straight for Don, with another bully on his side, and they push him to the ground, wailing on him over and over. The two other bullies at the same time punches Adrian hard in the stomach, holding him up, forcing him to look at Don being beaten only a few meters away. Adrian tries breaking free but is unable. He yells at them to stop beating Don, but of course they don't listen. Don himself isn't giving up without a fight though, and manages to get back up on his feet. He lays a couple of good ones on them both, kinda showing that just because you're a gay individual doesn't equal a pussy, like them. Eventually, Don gets hit in the head with a bottle, breaking off the bottom. Don is now laying unconscious on the ground on the bridge. Adrian yells, "You fucking bastards!" The weenie guy bully, still with the broken bottle in his hands, turns around towards Adrian, still being held up by two other bullies. He walks over to him, holding up the broken bottle near Adrian's throat. Maybe once again we can see the label, still seen on the bottle, read, Bob Gray's. The bully presses the broken bottle a bit more up towards Adrian's throat. "Did you say something, faggot?" A tear is slowly seen, falling from Adrian's one eye as he struggles to man up. "Just let us go. We're out of this town for good tomorrow anyways." The bully slowly lowers the bottle and drops it on the ground, just standing there staring at Adrian, whose mouth is really quivering. Suddenly, the bully in front of him breaks out laughing in hysterics. The two other bullies holding up Adrian starts joining in. They don't quite get it, but they're laughing. This continues for a moment or two before the bully in front of Adrian suddenly and furiously grabs him hard by the throat with his one hand. The two other bullies too stop laughing immediately, looking almost afraid of their own friend who now has Adrian's throat in his grip and are once again showing true hate in his eyes. This would remind us of Henry Bowers and his friends when they held up Ben in the first movie and they hinted at wanting Henry to back off from carving his name into Ben's stomach. The bully now speaks to Adrian with a lowered voice. "Is this true, faggot? You really getting the fuck out of my town?" Mirroring Henry Bowers' yelled out line to young Mike Hanlon in the first act of Chapter 1, remember that? The bully now headbutts Adrian hard and lays a few brutal punches on him before dragging him over to the side of the bridge. The two other bullies starts looking a tad more uncomfortable with the whole situation at this point. The bully, standing with Adrian in his grip, looking out on the water below, headbutts him once more and whispers to him, "Then why don't we just send you up the river right now, bitch?" The bully throws Adrian out over the bridge and into the water he falls. "Dude, what the fuck was that for?" one of the other bullies almost yells from behind. "Man, I'm not taking the blame for this one," the other bully says, just as shocked. The two fellow bullies that held up Adrian runs away from the scene. "Where you two pussies going?" the remaining bully yells back at them, before silently just shaking his head, leaning out over the railing. A light breeze fills the air at this point, and the ambient noises of the carnival is heard in the far distance. The bully spits a big one down into the river below. He scouts the perimeter a little, but Adrian is nowhere to be seen. A distant thunder is heard. Mildly, but it's heard, and the bully looks up. The moon and stars are glowing down bright on Derry tonight from a clear night sky. There is not one single cloud in sight. That's weird. He takes one last look at Don, still laying unconscious on the ground with a minor gash on the side of his head. We hear him grunt a little. The bully just smiles at him, saying, "Safe travel, faggot." The bully calmly walks away in no kind of hurry, leaving Don there on the bridge, still unconscious but certainly breathing. Cut to Adrian floating down the river with not much strength to spare. Now this is where it gets interesting, because in the book, Pennywise is there pulling him to shore shortly after going under the bridge, and I believe this will also be the case here. What? Many are probably thinking. Hold on, dude. What do you mean? I mean, we see earlier on in the trailer that the man is in the midst of all the erupting water inside of the sewers, right? You yourself said that, but no, I did not. I said, quote, "Water starts erupting through the sewer system. Next, we cut to a man in the midst of splashing water." End quote. Notice I never said that we see a man inside of the erupting water in the sewers. I never said that. I said that water erupts inside the sewer system, and next we cut to a man in splashing water. big difference. And that's the kicker, people, because many people I've seen online instantly believes that what we see is Adrian splashing inside of the erupting water inside of the sewers. And I totally get why, because it does look like it if you really don't look closer at it. It's like I've said from the beginning, clever, quick fucking editing, people. Adrian is not splashing in the erupting water inside of the sewers. He was never in the sewers. He's outside, just like in the book, near the shore of the Barrens. The following captured images here I really think supports that fact. In some of the images, I've cranked up the light in completely unnatural ways, just for the sake of these examples. All of this goes by so quick in the trailer. First, in chronological order, Adrian goes underwater a couple of more times, and this image here pops up quickly a few times, but almost only blurry, but I tried though. Again, cranking up the light and sharpness, we have the water where Adrian's splashing around. The shore is here, that's a sewer drain. A fence is here, very blurry though, but leading up to the road. This is a lamppost, and surrounding it all are trees and plant life. Now check this next one out. This image here, where Penny for a split second is first seen right above the surface of water, that imagery immediately follows this image here that clearly shows the shore near the water and everything else around. And when you watch the trailer in motion and pay attention, you'll see that it doesn't cut away anywhere between this image and this one. Here, let me slow it down for you just a bit. Meaning that the image seen here with the sewer drain in its center is where Pennywise more than likely is meant to just have emerged from in a flash and are now seen for the first time in this image captured here. So Adrian isn't being pulled in by Pennywise inside of a sewer, but I have seen many thinking that because of the way it was very smartly cut in the trailer. And check out these images here, which were taken in late September of last year when they were filming this thing. Look like similar surroundings to you too? So back to my fan vision here. Adrian sees the clown and screams for help, thinking he's probably a nice fella simply dressed up for the carnival in good spirit of honoring the old Canal Days festival going on. Adrian's swimming with all his might, and Pennywise is there reaching out for him, where I captured this image, and again lit it up in vulgar ways. Despite of some not-so-cozy looking yellow glowing eyes there, Adrian still takes his hand and he is being pulled to shore. Now, in the book, when he is pulled up on shore, Pennywise almost right away bites into Adrian's armpit, breaking through to his ribs. But I hope there's a bit more to it in this movie. Like, Adrian gets up on shore, barely able to see out of the one banged-up eye there. Sitting on his butt in the grass, he tries composing himself, while catching his breath and getting the water out of his other eye. "Thanks for your help," he might even say, trying to focus on the nice dressed-up fella who just pulled him in. Rubbing the last of the water out of his one good eye, Adrian now seems to get a good look at the clown who has crouched down right in front of him, just smiling very childishly like a puppy waiting for a snack. Now, what happens or might not happen at all, I don't know, I'm just speculating. But one thing is certain, if they want to amp it up and make it intense like with Georgie in the first film, then Pennywise simply pulling Adrian to shore and immediately, like in the book, bites into his armpit, that's just not gonna cut it. It's gonna feel lackluster in comparison to Georgie versus Pennywise, and I think you can see that. But if they twist it a bit in this new film and some creepy-ass conversation ensues for a bit before Pennywise rips Adrian to shreds, then we have something, people, and we could definitely match the opening of the first film. Whatever their conversation could revolve around, I don't quite know, and I don't dare to guess, but I hope we get something. And then, of course, by the end of it, Pennywise kills him in a nasty way, while Adrian screams agonizing into the night, echoing all over the place, and up on the bridge, this is what wakes up Don, who's still on the ground. His eyes opening in a flash as the screams starts dying out. Disorientated, he slowly gets back up on his feet, walking around a little, quickly holding up his hand to the side of his head, clearly in pain. Thunder is once again heard in the distance from the clearest of night skies. Don looks up for a moment, confused. Something has woken from its slumber. Don looks around on the bridge, trying to focus. Adrian? He notices the broken bottle on the ground with a stripe of blood that has been trickling down over the Bob Gray label. He starts panicking a little, looking around in even more confusion, and notices a stain of blood on the one railing. He runs over, looking down into the water, but sees nothing. He crosses the bridge, running to the opposite side, looking out over the railing. He carefully follows the water stream with his eyes upriver, scouting, and suddenly, to the one side of the shore, some 20 meters away from where Don is standing, there, reflecting in the moonlight, he sees Pennywise waving back at him while holding Adrian's torn-off head in the other hand. Beside Pennywise, the rest of Adrian's body is seen, all torn up, with some water spraying across it. Don goes numb, standing there staring frozen at this clown figure who now raises the torn head up towards Don on the bridge, and with his other hand, Pennywise is now seen putting a finger inside of his red-painted mouth, symbolizing the gay undertones, like sucking the weenie in a hot dog. Don is about to scream when the clown suddenly yells up to him, joyful, "Want a balloon, Don?" Don's mouth drops in pure fright, and he looks white as a sheet. Pennywise continues, "One balloon ain't enough for you, girly boy?" And though Pennywise seems to be whispering the last line, Don can still hear it in his head. "Then try a bunch." Don sees Pennywise's eyes now turning yellow in the night. We hear his evil Pennywise laugh as rolling thunder sounds as well are heard across the sky. Don now backs up quite a bit, pale as a sheet, stopping in the center of the bridge, and while the sounds of people's joyous roller coaster screams coming from the carnival nearby starts escalating, it all starts turning from joyful to sounding more and more like legit screams of hellish fright, all blending together, and this makes Don slowly turn his head in the direction of the carnival, with an expression already fearing what he might see when looking up. And there, coming across from the direction of the carnival, he and we, the audience, see the hundreds of blood-red balloons floating towards us. Cut to a wide shot, seen from below and behind of Don as he stands there numb, watching the sea of balloons approaching him out on the bridge. Remember those eerie, otherworldly sounds heard in the first film right after the killing of Georgie when opening up in the tube, where the title eventually comes up? Those same otherworldly, eerie sounds repeat themselves here right as the balloons gathers around and over Don on the bridge. And just like in the first movie, everything only escalates in volume, more and more and more as we follow the balloons down under the bridge like seen in the trailer. The balloons all starts passing through as the camera pans with them in that same direction, floating down above the river in between all of it. A bit further down the line, partly covered behind the red balloons, the title It fades up. Shortly after, followed across that, fades in Chapter 2. As we near closer, the balloons part ways and the fully emerged title now hovers clear in the air as we, just like in the first film, fly straight through, instantly muting all sounds that's been escalating up to this point, leaving us quietly with a camera now panning up towards the night sky, eventually fading out.